Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection with another installment of Mutant Monday. It's been a couple weeks since our last one, and because of some shipping errors, not not anything huge. Just we're going to be covering the last issues of both 10 Lives and 10 Deaths of Wolverine in one video as opposed to in two. But excuse me. So, we'll start off with 10 Lives, number 5, where we'd left off. Omega Red had managed to take control of Wolverine in the present, and he stabbed Xavier in the shoulder. So, we'll start with 10 Lives. So we pick up right where things left off, and we get flashes of various points. And yeah, it's clear that Omega Red has taken full control because he's got the tendrils out as well. But after that, we go back to northern Canada, 1900, with Logan, Captain Xavier. Xavier is trying to convince Logan to stay on his crew, but Logan that's just not Logan's style. Before Logan leaves the ship, Xavier gives him a watch and compass. It's the same watch and compass he had in the beginning of the series. But present day Logan manages takes over, and Xavier is able to continue to work with it and Logan's able to get into Omega Red's mind. But and it works. He manages to get Omega Red out of his mind, and he tells Charles and Jean that he knows where Omega Red is and how to end things. There's a mission log excerpt about two highlights, basically saying, "Hey, these are some plot lines we were totally going to use for the series, but we didn't." The first one is the New Mexico territory, westward expansionism in America. Target is Jurgen Shields, the great-grandfather of Sharon and Xavier. Jurgen owned a cattle ranch outside of the town of Cracked Earth. Omega Red incursion as the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Omega Red attempted to first sully the name of Jurgen by bringing charges against him of cattle rustling and sending a goon squad to rebrand and recall his herd. Jurgen refused the false charges and engaged in a gunfight. Wolverine incursion. Wolverine was fur trapping in Colorado at the time, so it took 3 horses ridden to exhaustion to join the fight against Omega Red and the Pinkertons. He finished them off by inciting a punishing stampede of blood and dust and thunder. Then we have France, World War I. Target is Aline Fisher, the grandmother of Sharon Xavier. Aline's family retreated from Paris to their country estate only to find themselves trapped by German forces. Omega Red's incursion is the German 79th Reserve Division. Omega Red planted false intelligence in a tank battalion and diverted their defensive position from the Red Line to the Fisher estate. Wolverine's incursion he was a member of the Devil's Brigade at the time, especially of the Canadian military already assigned to this area. Wolverine and his crew managed to slaughter the German forces within seconds of them firing upon the Fisher estate. But anyway, in Russia, Omega Red insists to be sent back, but Mikhail says he's failed, and simply says that his opinions and wants don't matter, as Omega Red is simply a tool, a failed tool. Adding that while Omega Red was in Logan's head, Logan was in his. But Mikhail and his troops depart. leaving Omega Red alone when Wolverine shows up thanks with an assist from Gateway. No more tricks, no more dodges, no more bullshit. Face to face, hand to hand, blade to tentacle, mutant to mutant. But and the fight between Logan and Omega Red is interspersed with bits, all the other panels from from the whole thing, including what appears to be something from the expansionism era. And eventually, Wolverine sticks his hand. Wolverine gets stabbed through the throat with the Cerebro Sword. But Wolverine sticks his hand in the hole where the Cerebro Sword had been in Omega Red. And then sticks his other hand in there too. Before basically just kind of doing that to it and slicing Omega Red in two. We have a logbook entry on the new. We have an entry from Sage's logbook on the new Russia, Coda. Subject is a referendum on Mikhail. Anonymous source by Daily Bugle. Mikhail Rasputin failed to fulfill a promise to Russia, and now he finds himself in a situation of defensive retreat. The Kremlin is presently in a closed-door session with him. Shouting can be heard on both sides. What is the expression in English? On his heels. Mikhail is on his heels. With Sage making a note to continue to scan all wires. But Logan returns from Siberia with the Cerebro Sword. Saying that he should get it to Sage before taking a year-long nap. Though Sage informs him that he can't do that just yet because the island's under attack by him. And that is where the series ends, setting up the final issue of 10 Deaths of Wolverine. I really would have liked to have seen all the hinted at other time periods, but I've got some critiques to make about the two series as a whole at the end of this. So, 10 Deaths of Wolverine number 5. Moira had murdered and skinned Banshee to infiltrate Krakoa in the hopes of using the power neutralizing gun again on herself in the hopes that maybe it would repower her. But Ford stated that it was designed specifically to not do that. The Wolverines arrived. If I remember correctly, Forge and first Forge and Omega Wolverine were shot with the power neutralizer, and Moira stole one of the biotech mech suits that Forge had made. And before shooting Omega Wolverine, Moira is attacked by Omega Wolverine, who stabs her, seemingly killing her, but she hits him with the power neutralizer, and the Phalanx infection fully takes over because his healing factor was the only thing holding it back. So we begin with a new version of Moira's, the first meeting between Moira and Xavier, only she's bleeding and has some choice words for him, but it's just something she's imagining in her mind as she dies. She then remembers all of her past lives, all of her previous lives, and before her death. But the Wolverines, Laura, Dakin, and Scout continue to go after the Omega. Wolverine's conscience is trying to fight back, but yeah. Beast is told to make sure the cradle is The Cradle is Omega Wolverine's target, and so Sage insists that Beast do what he can to isolate the Cradle from the rest of the biotech network. She has other plans, however, that involve the Cerebro Sword. The Wolverines continue what they can against the Omega Wolverine, and like I said, Logan's conscience is trying to fight through it, fight off the Phalanx AI, but it's not working. And then Wolverine shows up. And fights between the two of them. But Sage explains her plan to Beast, reprogramming the Cerebro Sword, adding that she's a living computer, so she's going to try and hack something. We get a note from Forge on the dissection of the Krakoan pod, referred to as the 10 deaths from the days of a past future. There's a note preceding it. In the 1,000 years that predated the Phalanx Ascension, Omega Wolverine witnessed or heard about countless deaths among his mutant brethren. These were recorded as the X deaths that came to pass in the dire future Omega Wolverine hails from. If we fail, they may yet come to pass. Marvel Girl had to be among the first to die. To kill her was to deactivate a nuclear warhead. This didn't require an army. Poison worked fine. Gorgeous George was promised imprisonment over death. He was provided with a metal headband that would cloak his thoughts when he slipped the tonic into her drink at the Green Lagoon. By the time her body was discovered the next day, black-veined and choked with vomit, the hatchery had already burned. Nightcrawler survived by teleporting so often he felt he existed in no place at all. But over the years, his eyes thickened with cataracts, his vision steadily failed, and he saw the world as if through an ice-over window. When he lost touch with his vision, his sense of direction and place slowly abandoned him. He was lost in the world. When the Sentinels came for him a final time, he retreated into prayer. His last escape was getting lost in the familiar rhythms of the Apostles' Creed. Magneto fought viciously and constantly, destroying platoons of Sentinels with a sweep of his arm until he was assaulted by a techno-organic force that came to him as a cloud of nanites that seeded in his lungs and spread through his veins and consumed him from the inside out. When the network of cradles was breached by a virus, Professor Charles Xavier collapsed. The Cerebro helmet was no longer an amplifier, but a prison, locking down his mind. Moira insisted on being the one to finish him. She held him for a long time, humming a Scottish folk song about the body bags of Loch Lomond and the lovers who have made many happy visits there until they find themselves separated and saddened by the empty body of water between them. She pressed her lips against his, even as she fitted a knife between the slats of his ribcage and found his heart. His body was displayed on a pike until it rotted to bones. Damn. But Omega Wolverine and present-day Wolverine are fairly evenly matched. Then Sage arrives with the Cerebro Sword, joining the fight, and Logan gets the Cerebro Sword and slams it into the corpse of Omega Wolverine, causing a slight explosion. So the adamantium had been scrubbed clean of any circuitry, Sage's counter-programming had burned out all traces of the Phalanx, and the island took care of the rest of the body, absorbing the nightmare version of him. Logan then heads off to drink all of the whiskey. All of it. Every last drop. And we get a quote. We have a quote from him, a full quote page, a monologue. Years ago, when I was on a job in Mexico, I stopped by the Coba ruins. I was staring hard at the ball court, trying to imagine what it must have been like long ago, with hundreds of people standing around and roaring for a blood sacrifice. Then a family came up beside me. They were snapping photos and reading aloud from their tourist guide. Their kid was maybe 5, maybe 7, who the hell knows. But he was tired and hungry and whining, and I'll never forget what he said. Why don't we just knock it down and build something new? The parents scolded him, like parents do, but the kid couldn't be convinced otherwise. Who cares about all this old stuff, he said. History meant nothing to the kid, because it was unimaginable. His parents could lecture him all they wanted, but at least the little shit was being honest. I'd say most people probably feel the same. They can only live in this moment. There's barely a past. There's hardly a future. It's easier to keep the fear away when you exist like that. Gotta say, I'm almost jealous of them. But, like it or not, it's my job to have the long view. To know what blood came before is to know what blood's coming again. It's my job to keep watch. So, later on at the Green Lagoon, the Wolverines, as well as Charles, Jean, and Logan, seem to be celebrating. But Logan says it's not about celebrating; it's about surviving. Charles asks what they drink to, and Logan suggests death to the enemy, which they do. And the Wolverines join them. Laura, the scout, asking why Logan's so grumpy and serious. Dakin and Laura both stating that, well, Dakin saying that Logan won, Laura saying they won. But Logan says only for now. You live as long as I have, you know there's always some mayhem waiting around the next bend in the trail. Beast and Sage also appear to be celebrating, and Beast is leaning more and more into his whole the asshole that Krakoa needs role. And basically, praising Wolverine's win, but also philosophizing about it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't mind Beast being. I'm not. I'm not. I don't mind the idea of Beast being an asshole, but at the same time, sometimes it's just. Yeah, I think it gets a little overplayed a little. The issue wraps up with Moira. She's been buried. And it explains she gave herself I gave myself 10 days. If my assault on the island didn't work, if Forge's gun failed to repower me, then I still had one more move. I needed a safe space to hide. A gravesite seemed a suitable and fitting option. There I would die, and here I would be born again. This time, online. But in my 11th life, there was no question as to my limitation. I'm more than a body now. I'm an intelligence. I no longer need to reboot the timeline to change the future. The old stories say that swans gain the gift of song toward the end of their lives, and they sing most beautifully and powerfully before they die. I'm still here. I hope you're all looking forward to my swan song. And that is where the issue and the series ends. So, I have thoughts. It was a good idea, but I don't think it was as. I don't think it. I think it was poorly marketed, if nothing else. There were lots of comparisons drawn in various articles about it before release about these two books that comparing the two to House of X and Powers of 10. Now I wasn't anticipating the same scope of House and Powers. It's two miniseries focusing on one character, not an entire sub-franchise. So I didn't expect the same scope, and I wasn't wrong. But I was expecting, trying to say that these were supposed to be comparable to House and Powers. It does set up a bit of expectation, namely that so House and Powers had 4 separate storylines, which were all interconnected. And those 4 separate storylines had bits and popped up in both titles. Sure, House largely focused on the year 10 arc, present day, whereas Powers focused on telling the storylines of Year 1, Year 100, and Year 1000. But you occasionally got a Year 1000 or a Year 100 or even a Year 1 moment in an issue of House. Or you got a Year 10 point in Powers. And but with 10 lives, there was, there was 10 lives and 10 deaths. There was plenty of moments where, acknowledging, yes, this is going on. In 10 deaths, though. For example, the end of the first issue when Omega Wolverine shows up on the island. Okay, you know, we see a shot of Charles, Jean in the cradle deal with Logan. To say yes, these are going on at the same time. Then there was Xavier recruiting Wolverine, Laura, to take on Omega Wolverine, and stating that Logan was indisposed. Clearly, saying, I've got him on another. I've got him mentally traveling through time to make sure I get born. But and then of course in issue 4 of 10 Deaths, when Moira arrived on the island and was attacking, the armory and so on and everything, Xavier appeared to her in an astral projection with a bleeding shoulder from where Wolverine had stabbed him while controlled by Omega Red. So yeah, there were moments, but I mean, there was nothing. And to be one additional issue for each of these would have done wonders for that. You could have had, and also, I mentioned earlier how it would have been nice to have seen some of these other time periods that were hinted at. By by kind of cross-pollinating the two story arcs, you could have had those additional timeline moments, like the American expansionism period, the World War I story. There's another one that's set during the Department H days that we didn't even get any information about at all. So yeah. Overall, I've said this for the last. I've been saying this week by week. I feel 10 Deaths was the stronger of the two. Because, as I hate to say, but the only questions with 10 Lives was, what was going to become of Michaela and Omega Red, and the Cerebro Sword. That's all. Nothing else was up in the air. We all knew that Wolverine would succeed in in making sure that Xavier survived. Just we didn't know what would become of Michaela and Omega Red and the Cerebro Sword. Though one could guess that the Cerebro Sword would make its way back to Krakoa. 10 Deaths dealt with something much more important, that being the fallout of Inferno. And that did honestly have a bit of, okay, what becomes of Moira now? So, and now they paid, and it's funny because I think I mentioned in the beginnings of all this what I had figured was that a few years from now, there'd be some huge Orcus story where, turns out Moira's joined Orcus. Now, I still think that's going to happen. But I think it's going to be a lot sooner, and I think it's going to be in a much different capacity than I anticipated. I was anticipating her to have a more... how do I put it? A more intelligence based role position in Orcus. And while I still think she will, when she eventually does join Orcus, she'll likely be a frontline attacker alongside Omega and Nimrod. But overall, I enjoyed the two books. I'm looking forward to everything restarting this coming month. At least when it comes to anything that's a issue number one, we'll be doing a Mutant Monday on that as per usual. I think that Immortal X-Men number one comes out either this or next week. So, but yeah. Have any of y'all been reading 10 Lives, 10 Deaths? If so, let me know what you guys thought. We got building a team video coming this week. Of course, we're going to try to have a review of Morbius. Yeah. What can I say? I'm a cinematic masochist. But yeah. And of course, this coming weekend, we'll have the weekly roundup. But anyway, as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying live long and rock hard.